Story 1. I always make my frosting from scratch. I make a box cake and homemade frosting, and people go crazy thinking I made the entire thing from scratch. It is so delicious. Story 2. Maybe this is not a great idea, but shredded cheese has its advantages. I used to buy shredded cheese in a bag. For the small amount of effort it takes to shred cheese, the benefits are significant. Story 3. Simple syrup for drink recipes is made with equal parts sugar and water, boiled until the sugar dissolves. The grocery store sells a bottle for almost $4, but I can make enough for 10 bottles with a $4 bag of sugar. Story 4. Croutons are super easy to make and far better than any store-bought ones. Unfortunately, they're so good that we often eat them as snacks before we can add them to salads. Here's my crouton recipe. I use whatever leftover bread we have at home. We love sourdough, which we can find at nearby stores, so we usually use that. I cut it into thick slices. In a bowl, I melt a stick of butter and add half a cup of extra virgin olive oil. To that mixture, I add 1 tablespoon each of garlic powder, onion powder, and Italian herb mix. I also add an additional teaspoon of salt. I mix well. Next, I use a basting brush to generously apply the mixture to each side of the sliced bread. Each slice gets cut lengthwise into about 4 or 5 strips, then crosswise into cubes. It can get a little messy, but it's worth it. I line a large baking pan with parchment paper and spread the cube bread evenly. I bake it at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 15 to 20 minutes, or until they are golden brown and lightly toasted. After cooling, I store them in an airtight container. You can adjust the seasonings to your taste, adding more garlic, salt, or any other preferred spices. I also save bread ends and scraps in my freezer until I have enough for a batch of croutons. I slice them beforehand so they're ready to be brushed and cubed when they come out of the freezer. It takes a while to thaw a chunk of bread to slice it properly. Story 5. Any kind of soup is infinitely better when cooked from scratch instead of using canned options. Story 6. Marinara sauce. You do not need to use fresh tomatoes. Canned tomatoes, preferably San Marzano, tomato paste, garlic, onion, basil, olive oil, salt and pepper, and a bay leaf are all you need. Let it simmer. Even that basic recipe is much better than store-bought. From there, you can add ingredients like pepper flakes, oregano, carrots, bell peppers, and mushrooms if desired. Story 7. Whipped cream. I grew up with canned whipped cream, but someone taught me how to make it after I got a KitchenAid mixer. It's life-changing. I will never use store-bought again. With just 3 ingredients, it's super easy to make and tastes fresher and lighter. Story 8. Cornbread. I make it in my cast iron skillet using the recipe in the Jubilee cookbook. It is simple, and while cornbread is almost always good when it is fresh and warm out of the oven, it is on a whole other level. Story 9. Homemade teriyaki sauce is easy and far superior to anything store-bought. You will impress your friends. However, a more useful regular recipe would be salad dressing. Get some fancy mustards, nutritional yeast, standard seasonings, garlic, lemon, oil, and a variety of vinegars, and you can make just about any dressing you want. Salad dressing is often quite expensive when purchased from the store. Story 10. Sauces and salad dressings. I don't understand what they are doing with those pre-made jar sauces for dishes like curry and stir-fries, but they are so bland and always very vinegary and bitter. It might save time, but homemade sauce truly enhances a meal. The same goes for salad dressings. They are typically quite simple to make, can be prepared in large batches, and stored in your fridge with no problem, just needs to be shaken. They taste 100 times better and are usually healthier. Story 11. Brown sugar. I don't use it fast enough, so it always dries out. I started making my own by combining 1 cup of white sugar and 1 to 2 tablespoons of molasses whenever I need some, and it is so much better. It is much more moist and fresh, and I get better baking results now because of it. Additionally, there are many ways to keep brown sugar moist. Instead of fussing with those methods, I simply make what I need and never have to worry about it. Story 12. A roux is made from equal parts butter and flour. It is great for thickening soups and sauces and serves as the base for a white sauce, also known as bechamel sauce. This basic sauce can be the foundation for many other sauces. The recipe is simple, and it is easy to make changes and tweaks to add extra flavors. Story 13. Make a simple syrup by zesting 6 to 12 lemons to extract the oils. Juice 6 to 12 lemons depending on how sour you prefer, and add water. I cannot go back to powdered lemonade. Story 14. Tortillas. Unless you live in a place dominated by Mexicans, good quality tortillas, both flour and corn, are not available. You need a tortilla press to make good corn tortillas, but you can make decent flour tortillas by hand without any special tools. Story 15. Chimichurri is made with olive oil, red wine vinegar, parsley, garlic, red onion, and a little lemon juice. I make a batch each week, and nothing you buy on a shelf compares. Story 16. Chicken stock, salsa, and spaghetti sauce. I don't buy any of those from the store because homemade is much better. Story 17. Turkey gravy. I made it homemade for the first time this past Thanksgiving, and it surpassed any store-bought brand I have ever tried. Story 18. I grow pickles, and my friends have been looking forward to this time of year to get a jar. I made my first batch yesterday. The cost depends on whether I need to buy jars, which is probably the most expensive part. However, they are reusable, so I just need to get everyone to bring them back. Story 19. Peanut butter is easy to make if you have a food processor. Simply get 1 or 2 jars of unsalted peanuts and process them until fully smooth. If you prefer a chunky texture, reserve some peanuts before processing. Once the mixture is smooth, add the reserved peanuts and pulse a few times. Store the peanut butter in the refrigerator to prevent oil separation. This homemade peanut butter is easy to spread, even when cold, and it is healthier than most commercial brands as it contains no added saturated or hydrogenated fats. Story 20. Caesar dressing. Smush garlic cloves into canned anchovies, mix with a squeeze of lemon, some ground pepper, Worcestershire sauce, or soy sauce if you don't have it, Dijon mustard, and mayonnaise. It doesn't even need to be homemade. Fantastic. Story 21. I bought a yogurt maker and made supercharged probiotic Greek yogurt. It is easier than I thought, and it is delicious and healthy. Story 22. Blue cheese dressing is often lacking in both flavor and quality when purchased from the store. It is simple to make your own using quality blue cheese and fresh herbs, resulting in a much better product than any store-bought brand. Story 23. Chicken noodle soup is not complicated. Just place chicken breast and broth in a slow cooker for a few hours. Add some vegetables halfway through and noodles in the last 30 minutes. I also like to add lemon pepper, but that's just my preference. Either way, it tastes much better than canned soup. Story 24. I wouldn't say worth it, because it's a 2-day process. However, homemade croissants were the best I have ever had. Story 25. My mother makes a red currant jam that I love. I dread going back to the store for jam. The extra sugar in store-bought jam seems to hide the actual flavor. Story 26. Homemade pasta sauce. I hand squeeze 4 cans of San Marzano tomatoes, add them to a dish with a quartered onion, a whole peeled carrot, and basil leaves. I cover the dish tightly with foil and cut a few slits. After cooking at 250 degrees for 4 hours, I remove all the whole vegetables. This recipe yields enough pasta sauce to last for 8 to 10 meals. Story 27. My fiancé makes pasta sauce and freezes it. We buy a can of tomatoes for about $8 at Costco, which makes enough sauce to save at least $40. Story 28. In terms of money saved, chocolate eclairs or cream puffs are a great choice. Our favorite deli sells them for $8 each. A dozen would cost $96 at that rate. In about an hour, and for under $8 in ingredients, I can make a dozen at home that are just as good and fresher. It's a useful skill for preparing party dishes. Story 29. Dough takes me 15 minutes to make by hand using yeast, flour, salt, sugar, and water. Once it has risen, I keep it covered in a mixing bowl in the fridge and simply tear off however much I need. The same dough can be used to make pizza, ciabatta, focaccia, rolls, hot dog buns, and more. It keeps for 3 to 4 days, improving in flavor each day. Shortbread is the easiest thing to make and tastes incredible using three basic ingredients: butter, sugar, and flour. Takes 10 minutes to prepare. The most challenging part is trying not to devour it all before it cools. Story 30. For me, it's whipped cream, no contest. In terms of value, it takes me about 90 seconds to make, creates barely any mess, and doesn't cost much, even with a bit of real vanilla. The finished product is of exponentially higher quality than any store-bought options in plastic tubs or aerosol cans. I can complete the entire process, including cleanup, in 2 minutes, even without power tools. Plus, liquid heavy cream keeps quite a while in the fridge, so 1/2 quart provides me with fresh whipped cream for my coffee, pie, or anything else for an extended period. Story 31. Blackberry jelly. I could buy it cheaper, but picking the berries and the end result remind me of when my grandmother made it for me as a child. Story 32. Marinara sauce is very easy to make. Pour a little olive oil in a pot, dice some garlic and onions and shallots if you have them. Add Italian seasonings if desired. Once the vegetables are translucent, pour in a can of crushed tomatoes. Cook for 15 minutes on low heat. Add salt and pepper to taste. Remove from the burner when it's ready, and add fresh basil if available. It will be the best sauce you will ever have. I use a secret ingredient. Instead of olive oil, I use rendered bacon fat, and it tastes amazing. I discovered bacon fat at the grocery store one day and thought, who would ever use this? Then someone suggested using pork fat instead of olive oil for the sauce, and it really takes my sauce to the next level. Story 33. Pesto. There are many combinations you can create, and the ingredients are simple. The last time I made pesto, I used parsley and spinach. You need nuts such as toasted almonds, olive oil, salt, pepper, and Parmesan cheese. Adding lemon when serving enhances the flavors. Story 34. Chicken stock makes chicken and turkey gravy taste much better than the boxed version. A good stock is the foundation of many recipes. I used veal stock for French onion soup once, and it was exceptionally good. Story 35. Bread. Pure bread. Store-bought bread tastes unpleasant now. Some people look at me strangely, but I swear it's like I can actually taste plastic in it. Fresh bread makes the whole house smell wonderful. It's one of the most delightful things to eat, and while it doesn't last as long as store-bought bread, I eat it so quickly that it hardly matters. Story 36. Granola. Every granola in stores is expensive, usually includes at least one ingredient I dislike, and is loaded with sugar. At home, I can choose the exact ingredients I prefer, use the sweetener of my choice, and it actually ends up being cheaper to bake than to buy. I haven't tried it, but I feel like trail mix is probably similar for people who are particular about their food. Story 37. Sauces and stock of any kind. You would be amazed at what you can do with butter, flour, cream, cheese, and homemade stock. Story 38. Roasted tomato soup is very easy to make. Roast tomatoes in olive oil with garlic and onions. Cook at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about an hour until the onions are caramelized. Blend the mixture in a blender with water or broth. Add some parsley, oregano, garlic powder, a little Parmesan cheese, and a bit of cream. Story 39. I am not much of a cook, but when I use green beans, I buy them fresh and cook them. The canned ones do not taste good. Story 40. Tomato sauce for spaghetti. Sauté onions and garlic with some salt in about 1 tablespoon of olive oil. Add 1 large or 2 small cans of tomatoes, puree with a stick blender, bring to a boil, then reduce the heat. Add a bay leaf and a couple of tablespoons of butter, and simmer on low for about an hour. It's easy and tastes much better than any jarred or canned version. You can add various herbs and spices for a personal touch if desired, but I prefer the basic sauce as is. Story 41. Pasta is not nearly as hard as you think and is 10 times better. Bread is a bit harder to make, but it is 100 times better than store-bought bread. The only problem is that it does not last as long because it is so good you end up eating it all in one day. Story 42. Pasta sauce, often referred to as gravy, is a cherished tradition in my family. As a second-generation Sicilian, my grandparents, who spoke only Sicilian, taught us how to prepare it authentically. Because of this, I prefer to dine at Italian-owned establishments in Germany and Italy. Eating Italian cuisine elsewhere feels incorrect, and the taste cannot compare. Story 43. Burgers are often purchased as pre-made options, but it's much better to buy some minced meat with your preferred fat content. Use salt and pepper as a base seasoning. From there, you can get creative. Consider adding chopped fresh parsley for extra flavor. Make small patties around 50 to 100 grams and flatten them so they are super thin. Stack a couple of those thin patties on your bun, and you'll have a burger that surpasses any store-bought option. Preparation takes only a minute or two, and you can experiment with ingredients to discover what you actually enjoy in a burger. Maybe you prefer a bit of spice in your patty? Just avoid processed burgers and choose a pack of minced meat instead. Story 44. I substitute Greek yogurt for everything I used to put mayonnaise on. There are so many things you can add for the flavor you're looking for. I can't forget about tzatziki. Story 45. Your own pasta sauces. Perhaps I mention this because I grew up disliking pasta, only to realize later that it was the sauce I disliked. It's surprisingly simple, often healthier, and easy to get creative to discover what you enjoy. Story 46. Is it weird that I always thought cake? Even the ones from the box that you just add an egg or milk to are better than store-bought. Story 47. My husband toasts whole spices and grinds them to create his own spice blends, which are much better and more affordable. Story 48. Simple salad dressing. Use vinegar and oil, along with shallots and salt and pepper. It is much better than anything you can buy. Story 49. I just made a lasagna from scratch last night. My mom used to get the store-bought ones, but I felt like making one. It was so worth it. Story 50. Almond milk. Blend pure almond butter, water, a pinch of salt, and a small amount of agave syrup. Voila! Story 51. Tartar sauce. 1 cup mayonnaise, 2½ teaspoons sweet green relish, 1½ teaspoons yellow mustard, and 1½ teaspoons lemon juice. Stir together. Adjust the ingredients as needed if you prefer a stronger mustard or lemon flavor. Story 52. Mashed potatoes. I don't understand why anyone would use flakes in a bag. They are so good when made from real potatoes. If you're feeling lazy, you can leave the skins on. Add plenty of butter, salt, and pepper. Delicious. Story 53. Pesto is very easy to make, and when fresh, it is so much better than store-bought that they might as well not be considered the same food. Story 54. When food prices increased, I watched several videos on breaking down chicken. Now, I keep a large bag of bones and vegetable scraps in my freezer, and when it gets full, I make stock. The difference between homemade and store-bought is significant. While store-bought is not expensive, it pales in comparison to homemade. I pour the stock into an ice cube tray and freeze it for storage and easy measurement. Story 55. Self-rising flour is simply baking powder mixed with flour. There is no reason to buy it. Hollandaise sauce is very easy to make in a blender and tastes much better than any pre-made or powdered version. Story 56. Cocktail sauce made with Heinz ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, a generous amount of horseradish, and Tabasco is significantly better than any store-bought version and much more affordable. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.